أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما نافعا اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Yes, Jezma abi, can we listen?
Yes, Abi, inshallah, we are starting.
اللمعة التاسعة. فكما رأيت خاتم الأحدية على الجزئيات وعلى الأرض وعلى العالم، فانظر ترى ذلك على الأنواع المنشورة وعلى العناصر المحيطة. فكما أن زرع بذر في مزرعة يدل على أن المزرعة في تصرف صاحب البذر، وأن البذر لمتصرف المزرعة، يشهد هذا لذاك وذاك لهذا. كذلك إن هذه العناصر التي هي مزرعة المصنوعات بلسان واحديتها وبساطتها في كليتها وإحاطتها بطرز متعين بعلم وبصورة محكمة بحكمة، وإن هذه المخلوقات التي هي ثمرات الرحمة ومعجزات القدرة وكلمات الحكمة بلسان انتشارها الحكيم مع المماثلة في الأشخاص وبلسان توطنها في الأطراف المتباعدة بتوزيع عجيب حكيم مع المشابهة في الأفراد، تشهدان على أن المحيط والمحاط والمزارع والبذور في قبضة تصرف صانع واحد، فكل نوع وكل عنصر يشهد لكل وللكل بأنكم مال من أنا ماله، فيصير كل زهرة وكل ثمرة وكل حيوان وحوينة سكة ناطقة وخاتما متكلما وطرة متلفظة بلسان انتظام الحال وحكمة المآل، بأن هذا المكان ملك من أنا ملكه، وصنع من أنا صنعه، ومكتوب من أنا حرفه، ونسج من أنا نقشه. فعلى هذا، كما أن التصرف الحقيقي في أدنى مخلوق والربوبية على أضعف موجود يختصان بمن دخل في قبضة تصرفه جميع العناصر، كذلك إن تدبير أي عنصر كان وتدويره يختص بمن يربي جميع الحيوانات والنباتات ويدبرها ويأخذها في قبضة ربوبيته سبحانه. فهذا خاتم توحيد يبصره من لم يكن في عينه غين وعلى قلبه رين. أيها المتفرعن، جرب نفسك، هل تقدر أن تملك شيئا من الكون؟ فاذهب واستمع ما يقول كل فرد جزئي، إذ يقول بلسان المثلية: من تملك مجموع نوعي يمكن أن يدعي التملك علي، وإلا فلا. ثم اذهب إلى النوع ترى كل نوع يقول بلسان الانتشار: من تملك الأرض ظهرا وبطنا يمكن له أن يدعي التملك علي، وإلا فلا. ثم اذهب إلى الأرض ترها تقول بلسان التساند بينها وبين أختها السماء: من تملك مجموع الكائنات يمكن له أن يدعي التملك علي، وإلا فلا.
Yes, thank you, Jezma abi. So inshallah today we will try to I'm hearing myself back. Is there anything that we can do about that? Okay, let me try again. Maybe it will work this time. Okay, Bismillah. Inshallah, today we are doing the 9th flash. And here we should again remember that in this treatise, we are trying to see signs of creation. And we are trying to see signs of creation everywhere in the creation and on each thing in the creation, on everything, each and everything in the creation. And that relates to the name al-Ahad and the attribute of Ahadiyya, right? And then it comes here again. You saw the seal of singularity. And the sign or seal of singularity that we will see in this flash, inshallah, is an interesting one because it brings everything together. Like we talked about the system before, and we were looking at the creation as a mechanism and trying to see the seal of singularity in the mechanism. Now we are going to break it apart down to the smallest element that makes up that system, that, if you will, like that machinery. We are going to break it apart down to the smallest components of it, right? And we are going to see how those components, those elements, are also showing us the seal of singularity. And there's a beautiful metaphor that Ustad Nursi is going to give us at the beginning, and thereafter it's a short representation, but it's very productive. All right, Bismillah. In the way that you saw the seal of singularity on particulars, on earth, and on the realm. So these are the topics that we talked about in the earlier flashes. In the way that you saw the seal of singularity on particulars, on the earth, and on the realm. Now look and see it on the species that are spread around and on the all-encompassing elements. There should be a "the" here. Let me put it. Okay. Now the terms species and all-encompassing an element, I would think each requires some explanation here, because once we grasp them, it should be easier to understand the rest of what's here. So when we talked about particulars, for instance, we said that this is something that Ustad Nursi takes from the science of logic. There are particulars and there are universals, right? Now the term species is also something that he is borrowing from the science of logic. And we went over this to some extent before. Species is within a category of things. We are going to call that the genus, right? In Turkish or in Arabic, the word jins comes from the same root. The genus, within a category of things, those members of that category that are distinguished from the rest of the members of that category with one distinguishing quality, right? That's what we call species. For instance, we talk about let's say the animal kingdom. If we think of animals as a genus, in the animal kingdom we have mammals, right? Mammals, then in the animal kingdom, mammals would be a species. Now, these are relative terms. And for instance, within the kingdom of mammals, you can have, let's say, sea mammals, right? Dolphins and whales and etc. And then you can have mammals living on Earth. So then sea mammals would be a species and mammals would be the genus. So these are relative terms. However, when Ustad Nursi refers to species here, there is also a sort of understanding that this is a reference to the different kinds of things that we see in the universe, in the cosmos. At the time that Ustad Nursi was writing, we saw this before, they thought, the biologists thought that there were something around 300,000 different species of animals and plants and living creatures, right? So that can be one example of species here. Or you can think of it as, planets. Planets is a species, right? So anything that you can think of as a category in itself that is distinguished from the rest of the things in the creation, right? You can think of that as a species. Okay, that's one. Now, all-encompassing, the word in Arabic is muhit,
Mustafa Hocam, a question.
Sure.
Is there is there a connection with the word special, species and special? Do you think?
Yes. Yes. I
Etymologically.
mean, they are coming from the same source, and I actually have an etymological dictionary. I can quickly look it up and tell you.
It's nice, you know, if we are all special in a way. So I mean, the term just maybe it's easier to understand. Allah just treats us special.
Well,
in a way.
so species would not be individuals, right? But
yeah, I understand,
everything in a species
still,
is special within the genus.
Right. So some notion of specialty.
That's correct. Yes, that would be helpful to keep in mind, to remember the meaning of the word. Okay. Well, special is, I'm looking at the etymological dictionary right now. So for special, after explaining things, it says see species. So we see species, and that goes to the word spec, which means to observe, appearance, outward form, distinct class of something based on common characteristics. So distinct class of something based on common characteristics. All right. So
even
the word,
we have a definition of ismi ehad here. You know, I think it is seen.
How so?
As we say, I mean, if we treat some specialty somehow, it turns from wahidiyya to ehadiyya. Yes.
So since wahidiyya is everything all together, and ahadiyya is each thing, right? So when we separate each thing from everything within the category of everything, we get to ahadiyya. Yes, mashallah. So all-encompassing, the word is muhit. Those who know Arabic or Turkish may also relate this to the word ihata etmek, right? To encompass, to take everything in it, everything that's possible to take, right? For instance, if you think of an ocean, right? It's a huge body of water that's filling a huge hole on the face of the earth, depression on the face of the earth. And there is no place that water is not going to enter as long as it is beneath the surface level of the ocean, right? You cannot have a hollow place, let's say by the ocean in a cave or something like that, and the water will enter there, right? So when we think of the word muhit, that's what comes to our minds, all-encompassing. Nothing is left out of it. It's covering everything. And finally, the word element, anasir or unsur, is the word in Arabic. At one point, philosophers, scientists, that those were one and the same thing until modern times, more or less, thought that there were 4 elements, and this is coming from ancient Greek philosophy, and other places it may have been otherwise. Ancient Greek philosophy, but that spread through the old world to many places. So you can see the same idea in China, in India, etc. They thought that there were 4 elements, and those were earth, water, air, and fire. And they thought that everything was a combination of these at various proportions, every material thing, right? Ustad Nursi also uses this from time to time, but he does not use it in the sense that the philosophers were using. He knows that there are other elements out there. Today, when we talk about elements, we tend to refer to the elements on the periodic table, right? Hydrogen, helium, lithium, etc. We can think of this as whatever is the smallest component in the universe, smallest and simplest component in the universe that's everywhere. So now that we are able to divide the atom, because in hydrogen is an atom, right? The helium, those elements are each a different atom. Now that we are able to divide it, break it apart, we can now think of this as perhaps like protons, neutrons, and electrons, or perhaps even smaller things than those, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is. What we know is that everything in the substantive world, in the physical world that we know of, are made up of these things. So when we dig down to the most basic level, right? The tomato that I eat is some electrons, some neutrons, some protons, and some other subatomic particles. And I am, as a living human being, also some electrons, some neutrons, some protons, so some whatever. And so is the sun. So whatever is the sun made up of, I am made up of. And the tomato is made up of. And the moon is made up of. And the air that I'm breathing in and out is made up of. There's one raw material that is used to make up everything. One kind of, like maybe it may be 3, 4. When we go to this smallest particle, that's what theologians suggested. And the word atom was originally used to refer to this concept, zerre, right? Used to refer to this concept. Whatever it is that is the smallest. The ancient Greek philosophers thought that it was a spherical particle. Muslim theologians, others too, suggested that it cannot be spherical, because if it is spherical, it has an upside and a downside. It has dimensions and it can be divided into something smaller, but we are supposed to be speaking about the smallest thing. Therefore, it should be amorphous. It should not have a shape. Whatever it is, right?
Yeah, these days we can call it just Higgs boson. This, even they call this God's particle.
Yeah.
The smallest detected right now, to my knowledge, is Higgs
Yes.
boson.
Yes, but that's one of them. But there may be more than
actually,
that.
It passes through everything, as you described. This all-encompassing, this Higgs boson, just goes through anything that you can think of.
Can you tell us more? I don't know the physics.
Yeah, this is briefly. They are saying that it is kind of, when we think about these fiber cables, through these fiber cables, everything is in a second, right? Transmitted to other side of the world, let's say. Similarly, Higgs boson, let's say, at any time point, it just passes through anything. It is, for us to understand, it is something very small, very, very, very small.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are still points of investigation for physicists. At some point, we might come down to saying that nothing out there is actually a substance. It's all energy moving fast, and because moving fast, it looks like substance, right? Whatever it is, the smallest particle, that's what we are referring to when we say element, the smallest particle that everything is made up of. That's what we are referring to. Okay, so inshallah, from here, I'm going to...
Is this the one that refers at the end of the first sentence, the all-encompassing elements?
Yes, anasir muhita.
Is it just pointing out to one element, or it could be referring to different things? As you said in the beginning, for example, air is everywhere, water is kind of everywhere.
We can think of it at different levels. So we can think of air and everything that is that exists in air, like the clouds, the wind, the dust, the fog, the whatever is in the air, right? So then air would be the all-encompassing elements, and then the species in it would be the cloud, the wind, the fog, the dust, etc., etc. Then we can expand it and think of it as all physical objects, right? And then at that point, we think of the elements as the periodic table, or perhaps break down even more and think of it as Higgs boson or electrons and protons and neutrons, etc. So what's important, what is interesting and helpful here to think that way is that, again, the word species is a relative term. There is a genus, and within the genus there are species. And with regard to all physical objects, air would be a species. With regard to air, cloud would be a species. So we can think about it at various levels and contexts.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Bakarabi.
Yes, Bob, it's clear now.
Okay.
So it could be referring to many different things in many different.
Yes, yeah. It can. So here on, I want to read the whole text once and then come back and start going over it, perhaps sentence by sentence or paragraph by paragraph, because it is a bit complex and, at least for me, difficult to understand. So once we grasp the whole thing at the basic level, and then we can perhaps come to the specifics. In the way that the cultivation of a seed indicates that the field is under the disposal of the seed's owner, and that the seed belongs to the disposer of the field, this testifies to that, and that testifies to this. Likewise, these elements, which are a field of artifacts, with the tongue of their uniformity and simplicity within their universality and encompassing diffusion, in a fashion that is designated with knowledge and in a form that is firmly secured with wisdom. And these creatures, which are the fruits of mercy, miracles of power, and words of wisdom, with the tongue of their wisdomful spread, while there is similarity among individuals, and with the tongue of their dwelling in distant sides and amazing and wisdomful dissemination, while there is resemblance among individual members, both testify that what is encompassing and what is encompassed, and the seeds and fields are in one artful maker's grip of disposal. All species and all elements testify for each individual and for the whole, saying, "You are the property of the one whose property I am." Therefore, all flowers, fruits, animals, and microorganisms are articulate stems, talking seals, and expressive monograms that say with the tongues of orderly states and the wisdom of belonging, "This place is the property of the one whose property I am. It is the artifact of the one whose artifact I am. It is the letter of the one who inscribed me as a character, and it is the woven fabric of the one whose embroidered engraving I am." On top of this, in the way that both the real disposal pertaining to the lowliest creature and the lordship over the weakest of existent beings are exclusive to the one who holds all elements in the grip of his disposal. Likewise, the administration as well as operation of each element is exclusive to the one who nurtures all animals and plants, who administers them and holds them in the grip of his lordship. Glory be to him. And this is the seal of monotheism that is seen by all who do not have blurriness in their eyes and rust on their hearts. O the one who has turned into a pharaoh, try yourself. Are you able to appropriate anything in the creation? Then go and listen to what all particular individuals are saying. They are saying with the tongue of similarity, "The one who owns my entire species." There needs to be an S here. entire species can claim ownership on me and none other than that. Then go to the species and see. All species are saying with the tongue of spreading, whoever owns the earth outwardly and inwardly can claim to own me and none other than that. Then go to the earth and see how, with the tongue of the mutual reliance between it and its sister, the heavens, it is saying, whoever possesses the entirety of the cosmos can claim to own me and none other than that. Okay, so let's try to go over it paragraph by paragraph, sentence by sentence now. In the way that the cultivation of a seed indicates that the field is under the disposal of the seed's owner and that the seed belongs to the disposer of the field. This testifies to that and that testifies to this. Can we visualize this? Do we all understand what this means? I had difficulty grasping what it is when I first read it. I had to think about it a little bit. That's why I'm asking this. In the way that the cultivation of a seed indicates that the field is under the disposal of the seed's owner and that the seed belongs to the disposer of the field.
Yeah, first sentence is a little clear, but then it gets complicated.
Okay,
how
so? Okay, so when I first read this, the word cultivation did not fully settle in my mind. I thought of a seed growing somewhere in a field, and I was like why does or how does that indicate that? But then when I thought about the word cultivation and thought about its actual meaning, it made more sense, because like you can see a stalk of rye growing on the edge of a field, let's say. It may have fallen there by accident, right? It's just growing there. It doesn't mean that the owner of the field owns the seed or dispose of the seed, put that seed there, cultivate it, right? It can just happen to be there. But if you look at an entire field, let's say 100 acres, all rye and the same type of rye and growing at the same time, same height, you can see that they're all planted at the same time, given the same amount of water, given the same kind of fertilizer, maybe, right? Then you know that this is a conscious act, and whoever is doing this is consciously disposing, right? Disposing of the seeds and disposing of the field. In charge. Whoever is doing is in charge of the entire field, because if that person was not in charge of the entire field, whoever else is in charge of the field would not let this person do what this person is doing here. And if this person is cultivating this entire field, like 100 acres of land with rye, that also means that the seed that he is using belongs to that person. And it cannot be two different things. It cannot be that somebody owns the field and is in charge of the field, and somebody else owns the seeds and disposing of the seeds. They may come together and cultivate the field together, but then you think of them together perhaps as a company, right? A company that is cultivating things in this field. What matters is that the place and what is taking place in that place, what is being cultivated in that place, they belong to the same person. This testifies to that, and that testifies to this. Likewise, so this is the representation for this entire flash. That we need to understand this well enough so that we can understand other things that are to come. Start gives these like little parable stories at the beginning of a treatise, and then once you understand the parable, you have the necessary cognitive pattern in your mind that you can use to understand more abstract concepts. This one sentence is the parable for this treatise. Therefore, we need to understand it well in order to understand the rest of it. Likewise, so similar to that, these elements, which are a field of artifacts. So the elements, so again, we can think of it as the elements of the periodic table or electrons or whatever, like subatomic particles, right? If we think of it, the concept of space is a, and Harun Hocam may help me here too, is a strange thing, right? We are so used to thinking up, down, left, right, forward, backward, ahead, behind, etc. All these things, but all these things are relative. You have to have a point of reference in order for any of these to make sense. And if we were in space with the literal meaning of the concept, i.e. vacuum, nothing, right? If everything, or if one thing, for instance, was in this vast vacuum of nothingness, we could not think about location for that thing, right? But when we think about existence, the cosmos that we are living in as space, that we are actually not thinking about a vacuum, we are thinking about something that is filled with things, right? So whatever that is that fills the cosmos, Ustad Nuri is referring to that as a field, as the locus, as the field, space in which things are taking place. Likewise, elsewhere he will also refer to it as the sea, like as ocean, right? There is something that is filling this space so that now you can start talking about locus. Likewise, these elements, which are a field of artifacts, with the tongue of their uniformity and simplicity, within their universality and encompassing diffusion, in a fashion that is designated with knowledge and in a form that is firmly secured with wisdom. So they're everywhere. Again, let's take the entire cosmos as our genus now, right? When we do that, as we said, we need to think about whatever that is the smallest component of everything, right? Let's say particles. Particles become the uniform, simple, and universally spread, all-encompassing, universal diffuse, all-encompassing thing that fills this entire space, right? So they are all the same. They are uniform. What that means? That means that they are coming from the same source. Like they give you a cup of water, you drink it, it has a particular taste. They give you another cup of water, you drink it, it has a slightly different taste. You say, these are not coming from the same source. This is from one spring, this is from another spring. Even though that difference in taste might be very slight and some people may not even be able to sense it, taste it, right? But if you can, you drink, you say, this is coming from one spring, this is coming from another spring. Now, if you look the entire cosmos and see that smallest particle is the same everywhere, then we say that logically it entails that this is coming from the same source. It cannot be that the same uniform thing on that part of the cosmos is coming from source A and this is coming from source B. It doesn't make sense. What makes sense is that they're all coming from the same source. So they are universal, they are diffusing in an encompassing way, they are filling every gap, every hole, every hollow, right? They are uniform and they are in a very simple form, in the simplest form. you can think of. They are not made up of different things, because if something was made up of, let's say, 5 different things, it would be possible to say, so this component comes from source A, this component comes from source B. Here they mixed and merged, and they made this item G, whatever, right? But when it is the simplest thing in the simplest form, and it is universally everywhere, there is no way to say it's not, some of it is coming from one source, some of it is coming from another source. They're all coming from the same source. There is designated with knowledge, encompassing diffusion in a fashion that is designated with knowledge and in a form that is firmly secured with wisdom. So the other aspect of this is, although they are uniform and universally spread, right, wherever they go, they coalesce into different forms. So somewhere it becomes a star, somewhere it becomes an ant. They are all, electrons and protons and neutrons, let's use that. Right? They're all electrons and protons and neutrons, but somewhere it became a star that is 100 times bigger than the sun. Somewhere else it became an ant, right? So there has to...
I
Yes,
can give
yes,
also one example for this.
Yes,
for instance, when we compare hydrogen and helium, these elements just differentiate by one electron or one proton. Hydrogen has 2, helium has 1 atom. So we can consider this...
Or is it the other way around?
What did I say?
Hydrogen should be 1, right?
Hydrogen has 1, helium has 2. I said the opposite, sorry. So yeah. We can think of these protons as what we say rice, single rice, piece of rice. So think that there is one piece of rice, which is hydrogen, and think of 2 pieces of rice, which is helium. It's kind of, you're combining 2 pieces of rices, it is becoming another product. It's
one
as
makes
that simple.
Rice, the other makes orange.
Right, like this. It's even in this sense, when we look at these 2 different elements, they're completely same. They just differentiate by one piece.
Yes. And the other thing is, 2 rices, when they come together, make helium or make orange everywhere. So this is the other aspect of it. So on the universe that as we know it, the universe as we know it is like 14 billion light years wide, right? So on one extreme end, you take 2, or that's what we are supposing. We don't really know what's happening there, but that's what we are supposing. On one end, you take 2 rices, put them together, it becomes orange. On this other end, you take 2 rices, put them together, it becomes orange. So what that means is that there is a designation here. Someone who knows the properties of these things, who knows what who knows their possibilities, right? Designated 1 piece of rice to become rice, 2 of them to become orange, right? Firmly secured this with wisdom. And because this designation also serves a purpose. Hydrogen fulfills a function in the universe, helium fulfills another function in the universe. And if you take one of them out of the universe, everything goes kaput, right? You have an earthquake. Everything has a purpose. Their activities are firmly secured, right? And this requires knowledge, and this needs to be designated. And of course, that designation requires will, although it is not in the sentence. So this is the field. Remember, we are coming from the example representation. In the representation, this is the field. This space that is filled with elements is the field. So what are the seeds in there? And these creatures, which are the fruits of mercy, miracles of power, and words of wisdom, with the tongue of their wisdomful spread, while there is similarity among individuals, and with the tongue of their dwelling in distant size and amazing and wisdomful dissemination, while there is resemblance among individual members. So the rice example we gave, the 2 rices, orange, 1 rice example, explains this too. So when it was all the elements, right, spread everywhere, it's one thing, that's the field. When those elements are being combined in forms and designated into shapes, etc., they start to become things, artifacts. They start to become creatures. And of course, the elements are creatures too, but species of creatures that we are talking about here. And these species of creatures, Ustad Nursi refers to them as fruits of mercy. Why? Like, what's mercy? Mercy is to recognize something's need and be drawn to meeting that need, right? So we said that hydrogen, right? That 1 proton, 1 electron fulfills a function in the universe. One of those functions is that it becomes one of the components of the molecule of water, hydrogen dioxide, right? 2 oxygen elements, 2 oxygen, 1 hydrogen, right? Who needs water? All living creatures that we know of. What's that?
2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen.
Is it? Okay, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. Yes.
H2O.
Okay, yeah, the 2 refers to what's coming before it. 2 hydrogen atoms, 1 oxygen atom. Who needs this? Who needs that hydrogen? All living creatures. Among them, I need it. I'm drinking, in my tea there is water, and I think you are drinking tea there too. There's water in it too.
Yeah.
So I need it. It is being provided. There is mercy in this. Someone who is merciful is fulfilling that. It is a fruit. It is the fruit of, it's the product of, outcome of mercy. And it's also a miracle of power, because, how could 2 hydrogens come together and fulfill my need? So there is something miraculous that's going on here, right? That indicates power, will, etc., etc. And words of wisdom, right? There is purpose, wisdom. These creatures which are fruits of mercy, miracles of power, and words of wisdom, with the tongue of their wisdomful spread. Helium is helium everywhere in the universe. Hydrogen is hydrogen everywhere in the universe. While there is similarity among individuals, they are spread, but individual members of the species remain similar despite that spread. So the same logic that we apply to the spread of elements, right? If they are uniform, if they are the same thing, right? They cannot be coming from 2 separate sources, 2 different sources or 3 different sources. So if hydrogen is hydrogen everywhere in the universe, 10% of them coming from one source and 30% of them coming from another source, and then 50% of them coming from another source, that doesn't work. They all have to be coming from the same source. Now, one may say, there are factories that make glass, and there are 100 different companies that make glass, and they can, if there's no patent issue or something, they can each be making uniform glasses. So they come from different sources, right? That's not what we are talking about when we say sources. What we are talking about is that where glass was first invented, whoever that was, whenever that was, wherever that was, right? They're all taking it from that source, right? Or whatever glass is made of, they're all taking it from that source. If they are using different materials, then they are not uniform, they are different. So the similarity that we are talking about here, right, refers to the essence of the thing. In essence, the hydrogen atom in one part of the world is the same or is substantially similar to the hydrogen atom in another part of the world or in another part of the universe. They may be charged in different ways, like they, especially for bigger atoms, elements, the number of electrons may be changing, but the electron does not define that element, right? It is the proton that defines the element, the number of protons that defines the element. And you can think of that as the essence of that element. In essence, they are the same. And they are therefore they are substantially similar everywhere. And therefore they cannot be coming from different sources. And with the tongue of their dwelling in distant sides, an amazing and wisdomful dissemination. They're all, fulfilling different functions wherever they go. And that's amazing. I mean, here, those who know may remember the subtle indication of huwa nuktasi, right? How air, it's the same air, but comes into, I breathe it, it becomes, it helps me breathe and burn oxygen and etc., etc. And then it's the same air I speak, it becomes vibration. And it's the same air that goes into somewhere else, that goes into the cells of the flower and becomes carbon there. Same air, molecule, atom, whatever, but doing so many different things. That's amazing, and there's wisdom wherever it goes. While there is resemblance among individual members. Yes. Both, so one was the field, elements was the field, and all these fruits of creation, fruits of mercy, these artifacts of creation are the seeds that are planted in there, that are cultivated in there. Both testify that, so one by one they testify that they belong to the same source, right? Now put together, you have the field, you have the seed. And the seed and the field also work together. They're in perfect harmony. One belongs to the other. If one belongs to the other, they together have to belong to the same source, same owner, right? Because you cannot have two things that are inseparably connected with one another, and one part belongs to someone, the other part belongs to someone else. That doesn't work. Both testify that what is encompassing, that is the elements, and what is encompassed, that is the seeds. And the seeds and fields are in one artful maker's grip of disposal. It is only one that can be doing this. All species and all elements testify for each individual and for the whole, so each individual and for the whole, saying, you are the property of the one whose property I am. Therefore, all flowers, fruits, animals, and microorganisms are articulate stems, talking seals, and expressive monograms that say with the tongues of orderly states and the wisdom of belonging. Tongues of orderly states, right? Each fulfills its function at the time, at the place, as needed, and there's an order to it, and none leaves the order. With the tongues of their orderly states, so much order cannot be without one who orders it, puts it into order, who organizes it, who designs it. With the tongues of orderly states and the wisdom of belonging, they say, this place is the property of the one whose property I am. What is this place? This universe, this world, where we are born into, what we see when we open our eyes and look around. This place is the property of the one whose property I am. It is artifact of the one whose artifact I am. So the fruit is saying, this world, this entire universe belongs to the one to whom I belong. It is the letter of the one who inscribed me as a character. The flower is saying, this universe, this entire thing is a letter by the one who inscribed me as a character. as a letter. And it is the woven fabric of the one who is embroidered and engraving I am, right? So each thing to everything, they are together saying, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah. How are we doing? It's 9:26, mashallah. Does anybody want to give me a rest?
I think this subject is really, I mean, how to say, too deep, you know, it's even we can ponder a lot. I'm perceiving everything with relation of seed versus field. When we look at our cells, for instance, the organelles in our cells, they are embedded inside the cell. So in this description, cell is the field, or organelles are the seeds. Mm-hmm. But when you look at a higher scale, the cells are organized in a way inside an organ, let's say. Then the cells become the seeds, then the organs become the field. So amazingly, at any scale, we can see that creation is in a relation of being relative the field or seed. So we can use this concept for anything, and I think nothing is exception. Mm-hmm. Even I was thinking of some Risale-i-Nur sentences describing man's condition. It was saying man is being seeded, and also man himself is seeding something. Maybe context is different, but even the human itself, we are receiving from, let's say, environment. That means since we are receiving from environment, we are in a way at a position of being seeded. Mm-hmm. And also we are changing the environment. That means we are cultivating, we are seeding. Mm-hmm. So I was amazed, you know, to this perception, I would say, seeing everything either field or seed. Mm-hmm. And we cannot separate the sources, as you say. The source should be the same. Otherwise, it would clash. We cannot control this. I mean, let's say seed belongs to something somewhere else versus fields belong to someone else, something else. There would be definitely a clash. No way. Mm-hmm.
Yes. What makes this so helpful and so universally applicable is the word species, right? It is the relativity of the word species that, again, going with the example we used, mammals is a species relative to the genus of animals, but sea mammals is a species relative to the genus of mammals, right? So mammals becomes genus, and then sea mammals becomes species. And within sea mammals, then you have whales, right? Then whales become the species, and sea mammals become the genus. So you can do this at every level, as Harna, you were referring to. You can do this at every level, and if you can do it at every level, you can see the signs of creation wherever you turn to. You can turn to the entire universe and have that 14 billion light year old thing in your mind, and you know there are visualizations of that now that help us to think about it, right? You can have that in mind, and you can then turn to a microbe that you can only see under a microscope, and apply the same logic, and you are going to find the same result wherever you turn to. The field and the seed, that they both belong to the same source, right? And that source cannot be other than the one, because with degrees, everything is a species to to a higher category, to a genus, and that is a species to a higher category, that's a species to a higher category. Whoever owns the whole thing can only own the smallest thing. And whoever owns the smallest thing can only own all the things that it is used to make. Okay, it is 9:30. Jazmi Abi, should we continue or leave these paragraphs to the next session?
Abi, as you wish. Inshallah, we can. Inshallah, we can finish it next week.
Okay.
Bakarbo, anything to share? He wants to share something.
MashaAllah, it's related to many chapters. I'm having difficulty to wrap up my thoughts, but and I don't want to make it more complicated, but you know, this chain Ustad is following from the Zarra to the planet, the 32nd word, and then he's coming back to the Zarra. Is kind of, you know, reminded me that. I'm not sure if it just matches, but it was very interesting to think it in the you know, from the perspective of hadiyah, because I was looking more, you know, in the universal sense. So like kind of it was looking like from the point of wahidiyah more to me. Just if I can in order to control me, you know, the cell, you need to control the body. You know, in order to control the body, you need to control the whole species. But now we are looking kind of from the other way around, as far as I can reflect on this. So whoever owns the body, he should have a special attention to each cell. Or in order to run the cell, you need to, you know, control over every particle running in the body. And it works again, you know, both ways. And very interesting, because even, you know, we believers, most of the time we focus on our actions, you know, with will, that we use our irada, and we focus on, you know, the you know, haram and halal and those things. And then most of the time, you know, when we relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, kind of we just refer to the things that in our perception miraculously, you know, taken care of. So we ask for kind of a special favor, and if it happens, oh, you see Allah just involved in this, and he just, you know, fixed it for me. But here, you know, but on the other side, you know, these elements, this water, whatever, air, they're all running around, you know. So kind of we need a special efforts each time to remind ourselves, even a leaf, even a, you know, an atom, a particle, a cell, and, you know, a virus is under the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and given special, you know, care, etc., etc. So these kind of, you know, experience or observation or analyzing how they settle down helps us in a way to again remind ourselves this fact.
Yes, mashallah. Yeah, I really like that. And Harun and I also refer to the same thing, right? You can go both ways. If you start from the universal and look at it, you are starting from wahidiyya and moving in the direction of ahadiyya. If you start from the particles, you are looking from the point of view of the of ahadiyya and moving in the direction of wahidiyya. But in this, we combine the two, right? They are together. One is the field, the other is the seed, right? And the owner of the field and the owner of the seed cannot be different. It's one and the same. And because with this logic, wherever we turn, we see his countenance, God's countenance, signs of creation, right? Then therefore it's the seal of ahadiyya, because wherever we turn, we don't have to have a grasp of everything all together in order to understand it. That's where wahidiyya starts, right? We can take a small thing and apply the same logic, because there's a universal and there's a particular in this small thing too, right? In there, and we see the sign of creation in it. Therefore, it is Ustad Nusib names at the beginning as a seal of ahadiyya, right? And that's the whole logic of this treatise, mashallah. Okay, let's end there, inshallah. And next week, we perhaps do a quick summary of this paragraph and continue from the second and third paragraphs of this flash. The third paragraph, in my opinion, is really important because it takes it from being a theological or theoretical matter to the level of practically applying to our relationship with the creation and with the creator. So it takes from theory to practice by asking, so what do you think about this? Can you own anything, right? No, you cannot, but your lower soul has this propensity to have a claim to things. But we just established that it can only be God who owns everything, and therefore not you. But we can talk in more detail about it, inshallah, next week. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.